All right, so there was some information that I'm sure all you guys that enjoy boarding loans, servicing loans, foreclosing on loans, and originating loans got some very good nuggets out of that. Good job. All right, we have one more session before we do our wrap up. So I believe our next speaker is ready. I know he's over there doing jumping jacks, and he's got that blood pumping. He's ready to go. So let's bring it up, and let's welcome to the stage Mr. Grant Kemp.
Thank you, sir. All right. How awesome has this event been, by the way? Let's give a big round of applause to Note School. You know, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but we can sometimes forget how valuable it is to be at an event like this where you have tons of people in the room who are of like mind, sharing the same goals, sharing the same ambitions, that kind of stuff. And if you're not doing a good job of meeting the other people in this room and seeing who's at a stage that you want to be and trying to align with them, you're not taking full advantage of this. So I'm really glad that you guys came here. Eddie and his team has just done a fantastic job of putting this on. What we're going to talk about today in my session, we're going to talk a little bit about the negotiations of it all. And the cool thing about this is that you guys have heard a lot about kind of the psychology of negotiating, and I align 1,000% with everything that we've heard about getting to yes. I think that the negotiation of this all, the psychology of why a brain says yes, is the most important thing about the business if you're getting into any kind of business, right? You've got to know how the human brain works and why people make decisions one way or the other. Because let me ask you this question. Which scenario would you prefer to have happen? Would you prefer that you get 100 phone calls in one closing? Or would you prefer 10 phone calls and 5 closings? Who can tell me the difference? Nobody? It's your ability to negotiate. If you can figure out where the person across the table is sitting from you and understand that they don't sit across the table from you, understand that you both sit on the same side of the table and you're facing an issue that you're both working towards a solution for, your ability to close that deal goes up through the roof, right? The ability of understanding that we are here to mutually figure out a problem and get to that solution together, that's the difference between 100 phone calls and 1 closing or 10 phone calls and 5 closings. Guys, I have built myself in the single-family residential world, doing owner financing, buying on terms, buying sub-2, buying cash, wrapping that, wholesaling, wholetailing, retail flipping, renting. If you've heard of it, I've done it. But the term side, the owner financing side is really where I've found my love. It's just the most amount of money with the least amount of work at the end of the day. And so a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to use the word seller, right? But I want to be super clear to you that seller just means who is it that you're talking to? Who's the negotiation with? You've got to understand where they sit. This doesn't matter, guys. If anybody in here has seen my wife or ever spent more than 5 minutes with her, you know I'm a damn good negotiator, right? There is no reason that beautiful, fantastic, like angel of a woman is with me. But you know how to get to yes, right? It doesn't matter if you need to know how to get to yes on buying a car, if you need to know how to get to yes on buying a note, if you need to know how to get to yes on buying a house. The human brain works a certain way. We all love to think that we're these little snowflakes of originality and that, oh, well, that's how they make decisions, but I make decisions like this. We all have brains, guys. And from a psychological standpoint, we're not snowflakes. We're all ants that follow a sniff trail and follow our trail. And our job as the negotiator is going to be the person to lay that trail down and walk our seller, our buyer, whoever that is, along the trail that needs to be walked so that we can both get to a point that is mutually agreeable. So we all, when we're talking about negotiations, we love, hearing about the personality tests, the this, the that, what are you on a PI, what are you on your Myers-Briggs? My position is that I love the philosophy of those. I love what they mean. However, I find challenge in that personally, going to a house and trying to do a field test to decide, is this person an I or a J or a this or a that or whatever? The field testability of most personality tests is where it kind of breaks down for me, okay? And this is probably just because I'm stupid and other people are able to do that better than me. However, I have found a way that made it to where I convert about 87% of every appointment I go on I walk out with a contract on appointment 1. I had to get really good at negotiations because I suck at follow-up, right? Follow-up is the key. You got to be better at follow-up. That's one of the things we put a lot of systems in to go. But I had to learn as a solopreneur and as people with a limited staff how to get to yes, because I knew if I didn't, it was going to fail and fall through those cracks, right? So what we boil this down to is a principle that I heard actually from a mortgage broker. He was talking about loan officers or salespeople. It's true. I got this from a loan officer at one point in time who kind of in passing mentioned it, and it just over time stuck in my head and just kind of sat. And the beautiful thing about when you're in sales and when you geek out on getting to yes and when you're going on a lot of appointments is that you get to A/B test everything. I've got a theater background. I've got the ability to say the same script over and over again and make it sound like it's the first time you've ever heard it. So what I do is I find those little specific words, those little specific tricks that can get to a yes and mix them in as we are trying to kind of block out every other kind of distraction. What we boil that down to is that people make decisions in one of 3 ways. Everybody in this room makes their decision by their head, their heart, or their gut. And everybody in this room has a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary decision center within those. And you have to know who you are to know who you're talking to. So we're going to dive into that pretty hard here in just a second, but we're going to start out with a little bit of the psychology of why I believe the way that I do. Here's a quote that I really want everybody to internalize, is that everybody wakes up the protagonist of their own story. Nobody, not a single person in this room woke up this morning and goes, oh man, I wonder how Grant's doing today. Right? As much as you would like to pad me and make me feel like you care about me, you don't. You are the protagonist of your own story. And this points back to a book that very clearly Mr. Basic enjoys as well, which is called Creating a Story Brand by Don Miller. It's very important to understand. Let me ask you this. Who in here has seen Star Wars or knows what Star Wars is? Who in here's arm doesn't work? Who in here who's ever heard of Star Wars or seen the movie can tell me how long Yoda trained to be a Jedi Master? Raise your hand. Who can tell me why Yoda got into being a Jedi Master? Anybody? Did Yoda get into being a Jedi Master because his daddy was a Jedi Master and his daddy showed him the value of hard Jedi work over his childhood, and he saw his daddy wake up every morning and he said, you know, that's the man I want to emulate, and so therefore I'm going to be a Jedi Master. Please, Luke Skywalker, let me train you. Did that happen? Can anybody tell us anything about it? No. Because Yoda wasn't the protagonist of that story. Every story has one protagonist, and that's it. Even the Avengers, you're like, well, Grant, what about Marvel? We've got, Iron Man and, the Hulk and this and that and the other. Even those, depending on which one you're watching, it's really about Iron Man, or it's really about Captain America. There's a lot of heroes in it, but there's really that one protagonist that sticks out, and everybody is helping them get to the goal that they want to be. So we have to understand that if everybody's the protagonist of their own story, that we are not the hero. My millennial way of putting this is #be the Yoda, right? You have to be the guide. You have to be the person that understands that you need to get this person on the other side of the table where they want to go in life, or else what's going to happen is you're going to leave that appointment or that phone call, and they will have made you feel great about yourself. You're like, man, they're sitting there, man, you are, I can't believe the stuff you've done. It's so impressive. I love that you have such a work ethic that you learned from your daddy and blah, 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 blah. But what they've recognized is that you're a hero. And how many heroes are there in a story? One. And who's the hero of their story? So you can like 2 stories, but until you fit into their story, that's not a person who's going to work with you. Right? We are here to complete their story. And of course, who you are matters. Don't get me wrong. You matter. But you really don't. You don't matter. The extent of your importance ends at where you can help this seller today. That's the extent of your importance in this world. For the next 4 hours that you're on this appointment, or however long it takes you, the next 20 minutes you're on this call, the only reason you matter is because you are there to help them get where they need to go. So if you don't matter, and only your seller matters, which part, right? This is the problem that we run into. The problem we run into is that we get so wrapped up in helping our seller that we forget we're there for a reason, okay? And so one of the things that I really like about the fact that we've had a couple of people talk about negotiations today is that we're all talking the same language. Have you noticed that? John, Brandon, myself, we're all speaking the same language. We are high converting individuals in a sales position, and we understand there's a core to this. Human brains work a certain way, right? And so psychologically, what we're doing is we're learning the Latin. We're learning the Latin of sales. Now, Brandon might speak Spanish and I might speak Italian. As I've been corrected, I said English before. I was corrected by the wonderful Miss Natalie. No, you speak Italian. It's a passion language. I said, you're right. Brandon might speak Spanish and I speak Italian, but we're using the same principles. We're both coming off of a Latin language, right? So we're going to disagree on a few certain things and we're going to agree on a lot of things. And the thing that I need you to understand as somebody watching these people speak on stage is that you are going to have a different sales process than I am. And I am going to have a different sales process than Brandon is. Because you're going to bring certain unique parts of you to the table that I can't, right? I've got certain ways that I can talk to sellers that I can get away with that maybe you can't, right? But embrace that. You've got to learn that about yourself, who you are and what you have to offer. Now, the problem is, everybody goes into this, okay, let me put it this way. If a seller, and I'm kind of talking about house sales, you know, because like I said, I buy houses and then I turn around and I create the notes that are eventually being traded and all that kind of stuff. But seller, doesn't matter if that's your note seller or your house seller. They ask you, what are you in it for? Who can tell me what your answer is? Who's going to tell me, why are you doing this? I don't get, why are you doing this? Somebody tell me, why are you doing this? To make money. Thank you. I'm glad you had the bravery to say that because so many people say, I just like helping people. I just love helping people. You don't love helping people. That's not why you're doing this. That might be a secondary reason, but guess what? If you loved helping people, you would work for the Red Cross. You got into real estate because there's zeros on the end of that check. And don't hide from that. Be honest with your seller because guess what that is to them? Freakishly refreshing. And it's also the cornerstone to so many of my negotiation tactics down the road. And here's one prime example of that. I'm here to help. I love helping people. Okay? 45 minutes later, I'll give you $70,000. I need $80,000. I can only give you $70,000. But my wife is pregnant and we're moving and we have this problem with the blah, blah, my car's broken down. I've got to have $80,000. Sorry, I can't do that. Well, guess what? Subconsciously, they can't point this out. But you're no longer in line with what they know of you. Remember what Brandon said about commitment and consistency? That is the most important thing, that you have to be consistent the entire way through of what they know about you. And if you said that you're there to help people and then you answer with a response that says you're not there to help people, that's why they say, I love everything about you. You're a great hero of your story. I really got to sleep on this. Call me tomorrow. And I walk in 30 minutes later and I walk out with a contract. Because I never bullshit them. I told them I was here to make money. So what happens for me, I never have that conversation anymore. I say, I'll give you 70. They say, I want 80. I say, I will give you 70. They say, but I need 80. And I say the magic words, I'm sorry, that just doesn't make business sense to me. And the negotiation stops. And you know what their response is? It's not, wow, this guy is a jerk. More often than not, 70+% of the time, their response is, no, I get it. You need to make money. This is how you do your business. So let's figure something else out, right? That honesty is just so refreshing to them that they want to work with you because you're the guy that's telling them the truth. And you're in line with everything that they know about you. So if you don't matter and only they matter and you're not there to help them, you are. That's a secondary. The way that I pose that, here's your tip, right? I find a way in the first 15 minutes of my conversation to tell them I'm there to make money, and here's how you squeeze it in. Because your seller will give you the pain point at some point in time. They will tell you why they're selling. They will give you a pain point to say, yeah, I'm selling because my sister's way into drugs and I've got to pour it all into, whatever. Some really valuable pain point. And you're going to say, look, here's the thing. I'm in this business because it makes money. I'm here because it puts food on my family's table. However, I love being in a business where I can also help somebody like you out of this situation, that what I'm doing is going to remove this one problem from your life. It's okay to want to help people. Don't get me wrong. I sit on the board of a charity. I love helping. I love the fact that we are here to, but that's not the reason why I'm in it, right? And they need to know that. So we squeeze that in to get that going there. So what does our seller look like? From a psychological standpoint, this is our seller. As we're talking to them, they've got a trillion puzzle pieces in their mind that we could spend all day solving. If we chose to, we could let them, sellers don't talk to you, they talk at you. They would talk at you for hours. You are here. You can fix one problem in their life, and that's it. Now, that's not to say that the verbal diarrhea isn't valuable. You've got to know why they're looking to sell. That is called using open-ended questions. We have to understand why they are doing something. I often say to people, I don't care what you do, I care why you do what you do. I sell to my sellers. I don't care what you want. I care why you want what you want. And here's a prime example, right, of that. Is if we can get to their why, which everything starts with why, another great book. If we can get to their why, we can solve problems with our creative minds as people who are in this industry in ways that they may not have been able to think of themselves, right? Prime example of that being the house I live in is a beautiful house. I bought it subject to from somebody that was facing foreclosure. They wanted me to give them $30,000 at the closing table. I wanted me to give them $0 at the closing table. We were at a little bit of a crossroads there, right? But I found out why they wanted that $30,000 was because they felt like that was the number that was assigned to them having security for the next 5 months on housing. So I bought the house sub 2 and I leased it back to them for 5 months and spent 10 grand while I had the right to go in there and do the renovations and stuff that I wanted to do. And I got 1/3 of what their bottom dollar was because I fixed their why, not their what. Does that make sense? So we understand that we're here to fix one problem. We're not here to fix their marriage. We're not here to fix their sinus problems. We're not here to fix that their kids suck. We're here to fix that they want to sell you something and you want to buy it. That's our life. And we need to gather through W questions. What, when, why, where. Not if questions, not yes or no questions, right? We gather information, and once you get the information you need, you set your compass to close, and you don't stray for it, because guess what? Everybody knows that you're there for a reason. Let me ask you this. You go to your cabinet that holds your coffee mugs, and you pull out a coffee mug that looks like this. Basic old white coffee mug, okay? And I want to buy your coffee mug from you, okay? So you're going to sell me your coffee mug. How much are you going to sell me your coffee? What's the number that pops in your head? Somebody tell me. What's the number that pops in your head that I'm going to buy your coffee mug for? Most people answer, I said that and then I couldn't hear anything. I heard $1. I think you're a liar. You're a liar or a bad negotiator. You're going to get more out of that mug. Most people answer, and maybe some of the people that didn't answer had this thought. Most people answer $5 to $7 on their coffee mug, okay? Now, we're going to reverse that and say, how much is my coffee mug worth? I go to my cabinet and I pull out a coffee mug that's not that special and I present it to you. How much are you willing to offer me for my mug? Most people answer $2 or $3. It's the same coffee mug. It's the same material thing. But the key to negotiations, oh, did I skip my slide or I just didn't put it in the right place? The key to negotiations, I ruined my joke here. I woke up the other day and I was like stretching and my wife snapped a picture, and so I just figured I was going to use that picture for today's presentation. You know, the funny thing is this isn't funny, that's actually the point. The funny thing is that I've used this slide many times and I tell that joke every time and it literally never gets a laugh, but you know what, screw it, this is for me, I think it's funny. All right, so I have the mic, you'll listen to my jokes. So the thing that I was getting at before about the mugs is that negotiations are an act of perspective. That's what negotiations are. I love Brandon's quote, which he may have gotten from somebody, but I love Brandon's quote of negotiations are the art of getting somebody to accept your position. Or no. The negotiations are the art of having somebody else, what is it? Yes, of letting somebody else have your way. Negotiations are the art of letting somebody else have your way. The way that I've kind of phrased that myself is that negotiations are an act of perspective. And successful negotiators are people who can understand perspectives that they don't agree with and study the art of influence. And you're going to understand a little bit more of what I mean here in just a second. So, when we're talking about successful negotiations, and we're talking about this picture that I took of myself the other day, it's so funny. Everybody makes decisions in one of three ways. And everybody has a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary decision factor here. Now, here's the thing, okay? I respect the guys that I hear take this position enough to not say that it is wrong. And I mean that like in the purest sense of like I am constantly battling myself to say that I need to get on board with the way that they think because they are so good at negotiating that I understand that I am probably the wrong one, okay? That preface being said, the adage of people only make emotional decisions, I disagree with. I believe that a lot of people make emotional decisions. I also believe that some people make head decisions, and some people make gut decisions. And the argument back is, well, isn't that head decision based in an emotional reaction? Maybe, okay? Maybe. But this has worked for me. So maybe if you have trouble with the in-person litmus test of what their personality test would come out as I do, maybe this will help you through your negotiations, all right? So here's what we need to understand. A head person, somebody who makes decisions with their head, is somebody who needs all the details. You can never give a head person too much information or detail. You have to completely overload them with information and details, and they will decide which of those details and pieces of information they need to make that decision. But they also need to see that you have that data. It goes down to what we were referring to, or what Brandon was referring to earlier as that analyst, I think he called him, right? A head person needs way too many details. A head person works entirely based on logic. 1 + 1 = 2 to a head person, and that's it. So they're constantly structuring your offer and you as a person in this field of, does this make sense for my situation? Okay? Not, and here's where kind of subtly the behind the scenes of these things come, right? We would all agree that somebody can sit there and say, does this make sense for my situation, right? Are we all on the same page of the seller's looking at it like that? I could, if I was a bad marketer, phrase that as, does my offer make sense to them? But who is the protagonist of that statement? It's me. Is what I am doing effective to them, right? We need to think about, when they think about it, they don't say, does this guy's offer make sense? They say, does this make sense for my situation? Very subtle, but very important, because they are the protagonist of their story, and we need to talk to them, right? Here's my goal, is by the end of this, like I feel like, and maybe Brandon feels this way too, some of the better negotiators in here probably feel this way, I feel like we've seen The Matrix, right? Like you see The Matrix and there's that guy in there and he's like, you see a beautiful woman with a red dress and all I see is ones and zeros. When you start studying psychology and you start studying the sale, you start seeing the ones and zeros of everything that's happening. And it's very important that you're able to do that, and I'll bring that all together for you here in just a second. The head person loves numbers. They want the bottom line and they don't want to waste their time, okay? Now, I'm an educator. And I teach people how to buy houses and all that kind of stuff. And I used to go on appointments with my students. And there was one student that I thought was going to do very well. I'm very picky about who I bring in. And I thought this girl was going to do great. But she could never get away from pitching the purchase of this property as, think about what this would do for your family. Because she was doing this business for her family, right? And so we were on one appointment in particular where the guy just kept being like, yeah. Well, what percentage are you offering me? Okay, well, what's the purchase price? And she's like, well, we're going to buy it for $180, and we're going to pay you 4.5% on it, which means that you can just think about the vacations you're going to be able to take your family on, and think about what this is going to do for your children's school, and blah, 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 using emotional language to a non-emotional decision center. And he kept trying to pull her back and give her the clues that he didn't care about that, and she couldn't get away from it, and her conversion rates were poor because of it. Things head people say is they're going to keep steering that conversation back to the numbers. over and over and over again. They will keep going back to the numbers. You will try to feed them with the thing that you think they want to know, and they will keep asking you the numbers. They become quickly disinterested when you start using emotional language. Surprisingly enough, I really need to think this over. Actually isn't a big head person thing, and I'll get into that in a second. So raise your hand if you are in this room sitting here saying, that aligns with, I think I make decisions that way. Are you a head person? Raise your hand. Okay? Usually a large portion of this type of room is a head person. Next, heart. Heart people make emotional decisions. Heart people need to like you. Heart people have to like you. Okay? Rapport is just so important for a heart person because they are making the decision to sell to you. They are not making the decision to make money. I love this quote Daniel Moore has said before. I've stolen it. I say it many times now. Rapport has bought many more assets than money ever has. And I agree with that 1,000%. Rapport has bought more assets than money ever has. Visualization is huge for a heart person. You've got to paint a picture with what their life is going to look like by selling to you. Okay? Here's a prime example. I bought a house from a heart person who she was going to go to like a retirement home after she sold the house to me, okay? And the house was beautiful. The house was for what it was. It was a house that she bought in 1971, brand new, and had paid it down. It was over here in Garland, in the North Garland area, and it was taken great shape of. Heart people love to imagine the house is animate, and this is the pitch for that, okay? Look, this house is perfectly fine to live in. Obviously, you're living in it. It's beautiful, but she needs some love. And that's what I do. You have tons and years and years and years of experience in this house, of memories in this house. But at this point in time, it's time to move on and let somebody like me come in here and build it back to its greatest glory and let a new family come in here and make their memories in this house. Now, all you head people that raised your hand earlier, how sleazy did that feel? Right? This is what I'm talking about, guys. There is a difference between lying and focusing on a certain portion of the truth. What do I mean by that? That sounds very shady. White light, we can all agree, is white light, correct? But you shine white light through a prism and it breaks up into some colors that if I was smarter, I could tell you what they were. Those colors are no less part of white light, are they? Now, together, those colors make up the white light. White light is truth. And if we need to come to a situation with a negotiation understanding that our seller is colorblind and can only see blues and greens, why are we talking about red to them? You see what I'm saying? To a heart person, this is an entirely valid pitch. Because that's how they want to make their decision. And if we're not going to respect their ability to make their own decisions, what are we doing? If we're not good enough at our job to figure out why somebody wants to sell their house, what are we doing? Why are we pitching them on why we would sell the house? Why are we pitching them on why we would buy the house? Because we think we're the hero. And who's the hero? They are. So give them that respect. Speak their language to them. Speak to them the way that they need to hear you. Here's the thing. Heart people, the thing that they are going to say, surprisingly, I need to think on it, that's a heart person quote. We think I need to think on it talks about a brain, so it makes him a head guy. But what's 1 + 1 to a head person? Wow, we got a bunch of people trying to buy notes that can't add 1 and 1. This is rough. I thought you guys were a qualified audience. I take it all back. No, school, you did a terrible job. What is 1 + 1? Does a head person need overnight to figure out that 1 + 1 is 2? No. What a heart person is saying when they say, I need to think about this, a heart person is saying that they're just not ready. They're just not ready yet to accept that truth, whatever that truth is. They need some massaging. You need to help them trust you. There's something wrong, okay? I don't walk away from appointment 1 without a contract. They know when I'm showing up that I'm there to sign a house because when I'm on the phone, I say, hey, I'm going to have the contracts with me. So when we get done talking this all over, we'll be able to get everything worked out, and I can start moving on this and remove this one problem from your life. Prepping them. It's a persuasion, Robert Cialdini. So then when I show up and I approach okay, let's get this signed now, that's not new to them. They're not having to get to that position. They knew when I was coming that that was my goal, right? And so if they say, hey, I need to really sleep on this, then I'm going to say, okay, I get that. I understand. Honestly, frankly, most of the time when somebody says they need to sleep on it, it's because I haven't answered all their questions. So what is it? Is it a problem that you have with me, the numbers, or the contract? Let's break this down. Let's make them tell us why it's a no. We need to know why their answer is what it is. We don't care what their answer is. And I guarantee you, if you keep breaking that down, you will be able to feel or figure out what their center is. And a lot of times it's that they need that time. And I have some other cool tricks of how to get to the contract, but we don't have all day. I could yap on negotiations for hours. I love negotiating. The last person is the gut person. A gut person makes quick decisions, and they need to feel like they like you. See the subtle difference between heart and gut? A heart person needs to like you. A gut person needs to feel like they like you. First impression is massive with a gut person. Regardless of their decision factor, you always got to put your best foot forward, but first impression is massive with a gut person because they make decisions quickly and they stick by them. And they're going to reach that Leroy Jenkins moment if you play your cards right. The gut person often presents as a head or heart. This is the difficult thing. You've got to feed that center hard enough until they pull the trigger. Here's the interesting thing. Gut people are very hard to decipher because a gut person presents as though they are a head or a heart person. Okay? A gut person will say questions that make you think that they need answers about the numbers. Let me say this. How many people in here, right, by show of hands, and act like your arms work for me, guys? I'm like, come on. How many people in here, by show of hands, have talked to a seller of some sort, whether that's a note seller or a homeowner or whatever? You've talked to a seller. Keep your hands raised, right? How many in here have left one of those conversations saying, man, I killed it, but they didn't sell. I don't understand what's going on, right? How many people have gotten to a position in that negotiation where you're talking to them, they ask you a question, you start to answer it, they change the subject, and then you're panicked for the next 5 minutes because you're trying to figure out how to get back to answer the rest of the question? It's a gut person. Gut people don't care that you have they don't care what the answer is, they care that you have the answer. You hear me? Gut people don't care what the answer is, they care that you have the answer. So what you're going to see is that a gut person is typically going to change the subject a lot. Gut people are the life of the party. Gut people are lots of fun to be around. They make decisions, they fly with it, they stick by it, they stick to their guns. They start off interested in those numbers, but then they quickly glaze over. They are interested that you can appeal to the heart, but they lose interest in all your cute little stories. And like I said, they're typically very confident and outgoing. Again, I will say, negotiations are an act of perspective, and successful negotiators understand perspectives that they don't agree with, and they study influence. So let's talk about this for a second, okay? We've got head, heart, and gut. And I've got 98% of the room sitting out here saying, wow, but I make my decisions off of numbers and off of emotions, Grant. I make my decisions off of... So here's a little exercise that I want to run us through. Let's all think about the last large cash purchase that we made, which is typically the last time you bought a car. Okay, so imagine that process. The last time that you bought whatever car you bought, think about that. Did you spend 3 weeks researching what the miles per gallon were on SUVs that could hold your blankety blank or your family or your hockey sticks or whatever and figure out which one had the lowest cost of overall maintenance and ownership, blah, 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 right? You get where I'm going with that. You spent 2 weeks detailing out all of the things, all of the material items that matter about the purchase of that vehicle. You found one, and then you found the best price on that vehicle with the best interest rate, and you pulled out your amortization calculator that Note School has taught you how to use, and you said, I'm going to pay 3.2% interest on this, and that means that even though I'm buying it for $35,000, ultimately I'm buying it for $40,000, and I'm okay with that. You're a head person. A heart person says, I need a new car, and I've really enjoyed this car, or you could hate the car, whatever. I'm going to ignore that part. You either hate or you love the car. There's no in between, let me put it that way. You hate or you love the car that you currently have. It's finally time to go get another car. And you have to go in and test drive several different models. And the car that you bought is because it just felt so darn cool. You freaking loved how the seat hugged and how the steering wheel felt, and like, oh my gosh, like I can even, I just imagine like pulling up and picking up my date or dropping off my kid, and oh man, on a nice night I can put the sunroof back and this is gonna be beautiful. That's a heart person. Or is it, you know what? I need a freaking new car. I just realized I've had this car for 8 years. It's time to buy a car. Let's go to the dealership and see. And you walk in, and the guy walks out to meet you, and he says, hey, how you doing? You here to buy a car? Let me sell you a car. Because that's how car dealers talk. And trust me, I've bought a car before. That's all. No. And so you go in there, and they say, well, what do you want? What are you looking for, champ? You want a truck? You want to be able to tow things? And you're like, I don't know, man. I want a car. Like, friggin' that Mustang looks cool. Let's drive it. And you get in it, and you're like, yeah, this will do. How much is this thing? 30? All right, yeah, let's do this. That's a gut person. Okay? Now raise your hand if you fit in the head bucket. Yeah, a lot more people understand that are ahead now, huh? Raise your hand if you fit in the heart bucket as your primary decision center. Raise your hand if you fit in the gut bucket. That sounds gross. It's like a... If you're gonna spew in this. Wayne's World, anybody? No? All right. So what I'm getting at here is that when I say that a negotiation is an act of perspective, negotiation at its core is understanding that white light is one thing. But sometimes to get to yes, you've got to put on those cool 3D glasses that only show you blue or red. Okay? And you have to understand this. You have to understand that a heart pitch to a head person is the sleazy car salesman. You have to understand that a head pitch to a heart person, you're kind of bossy and pushy and you just don't get them. I just didn't feel good selling it to them. They just didn't understand me. The gut pitch to a head person, you're an idiot. All you head people out there, if I walked into your house and I said, because guys, I have bought 25 houses this way, saying these words. My closing is, look, you wouldn't have called me if you didn't know this wasn't a good decision. So we're just sitting here talking to each other, but we both know you're going to sell it. So why don't we just sign the contracts and get on with it? If I gave that to you before as a head person, before I told you like what my interest rate was going to be and all that kind of stuff, you're like, what is this idiot freaking, just go, leave. But I understood that even though there's no way I would sell somebody an asset of mine like that, that's how that person sells. I have to understand a perspective that I don't agree with. And I have to be good enough at negotiating to understand how to talk to that perspective. Where are they coming from? Because they are the hero. They are the one that matters. So this is where my clickbaity title of there's a 66% chance you're wrong comes from. Because if you go in there and you try to pitch your head pitch to a heart person, it ain't going to work. You're not going to win. And when I asked that question a second ago and I said, keep your hand raised if you've ever left it, and you said, I killed that appointment. Why didn't they sell to me? It's because you sold them on your decision center. When the negotiation starts getting tough and you start having a default to some arguments that are kind of fly by the seat, the arguments you want to default to are the ones that make the most sense to your decision center. So if you keep defaulting to your decision center and you're not talking to their primary decision center, you feel great about that argument because it makes a lot of sense. But it doesn't sit. It doesn't land. They're not going to say yes to you because you're not talking to them. You're the hero. You're negotiating against you, not them. So you need to understand who you are because that is what you're going to default to, and you have to catch yourself. You have to catch yourself whenever you start. If you're a heart person, giving heart language to a head person, you have to catch yourself. That's why I made you raise your hand and make you think about who you are. And we all have a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary decision center in this. So here's how it works. okay? The way I make decisions is I need all the details until I realize I got enough details, and then I'm like, screw it, let's do this. Let's figure it out. I'm like 50% head, 50% gut, and I'm basically heartless. You start trying to pitch me on emotional language, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Get out, you're an idiot. Don't tell me what this is going to do for my family. Freaking respect my intelligence enough to figure out what I'm going to do for my family. I need to know the numbers, right? And then whenever I see enough details in front of me that allow me to say, all right, I feel like I know enough to make, then my gut kicks in and I go. Don't pitch me on heart stuff. That's not going to work. So everybody in here has a primary, secondary, and tertiary decision center. You've got that one that's kind of the gatekeeper, right? You got that one like gatekeeper decision center. They had better appease my heart, or else I'm not going to let them in to the one that actually makes the decisions, right? So for me, you better appease my brain before I let you in to my actual decision center. Now, some people, very rarely, are all three, but it's very rare, okay? So spend some time really sitting down and analyzing who you are and what your pitch is. And are you truly giving your seller the respect that they deserve, or are you putting yourself as the hero and only speaking to yourself as though that person didn't even exist, right? So next time you go into a negotiation, you're going to be looking for these cues. You're going to be looking for, do they want a lot of numbers? You're going to be looking for, do they, a heart person will talk about their family. I know I left off the what will a heart person say. They will talk about their family. Either family lives with them, they're going to go stay with family, blah, 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 blah. Their family will get brought up. Again, the gut person. They're going to ask you to feed their decision center that you think is heart or head, and then they're going to quickly lose interest in that. And you do need to test that and push back like 2 or 3 times, okay? Bring it back, because they may have just gotten ADD and gotten another question. But if you have consistently tried 2 or 3 times in that situation that I know you all have faced, where it's like they asked me the question, I got 3 sentences into it, and they moved on, oh my gosh, they don't know the answer, I have to find this. Try to answer it 2 or 3. If they change the subject more than a couple of times on that, they're a gut person, and just leave it. If you start to answer the question and they move away, flow with it. Leave it alone. They don't care what the answer is. They care that you have an answer. All right? Thank you guys very much.